All right, good evening. We'll call to order the regular council meeting here on Wednesday, September 8th, 7 p.m. at the Charlotte County Courthouse, located at 123 Frederick Street here in beautiful St. Andrews by the Sea. To start, we'll go into the recording of attendance. I note that all members of council are in attendance. We do have 2 virtually, but we do have the other 4 members with me here at the courthouse. If we get into approval of agenda, I'll be looking for a mover to approve the agenda as circulated.
Your worship.
Okay, I've got Councillor Heenan and a seconder would be Councillor Hurdle. Any discussion, changes, alterations to the agenda? Looking around, seeing none. Oh.
Does mine have
It does not, no. So at this point, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that is everybody. We carried the agenda. At this point, I'll be looking for a disclosure of conflicts of interest. Okay, we got Councillor Hurdle. Is there one that you want to give reference to?
There are 2, both in regards to FA 210810 with this discussion around Scotiabank credit facilities, and also PED 210808, the short-term rental bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be looking for you to just recuse yourself at that particular time. Anyone else? Okay, if anything pops up throughout the meeting, by all means, please feel free to declare it. At this time, then we'll get into presentations. And I know that Kayleen Mower, who's with the Town of St. Andrews Environmental Advisory Committee, would be here for a presentation in regards to their budget consideration for 2022. So welcome and please join us.
Can you hear me? So I'm here just to discuss a little bit about what the advisory committee has been talking about for the past year and kind of the recommendations that we have coming out of that and some things that we'd like to ask at the council. So essentially last year, we put out a survey to the town or to the residents of the town, had about 54 respondents. And there was a strong response from people worried or concerned about climate risks in the community and greenhouse gases mitigation and climate adaptation planning. So, and there was subcategories from all of those things. And we just kind of pulled a few that we felt were not necessarily the lowest hanging fruit, but the ones that we kind of wanted to put a lot more effort into and we thought would be a good place to start for us and for the town as well. So the first one that we have been really focused on is, I would say, composting. And so kind of the goal that we identified is that we want to increase sustainability and reduce waste through composting and recycling for the town, which makes a lot of sense. And the big sort of what we want to ask, I guess, is for funding to conduct a feasibility study. So we've had a few members of the committee go through kind of a lot of research and discussion and to try to identify a way, like an easy way and a really direct way for the town to start composting residential and for businesses and stuff like that. So, and it kind of proved a little bit difficult to find something that really stuck out as like, yes, this will work. And so we'd like to kind of contract that out to someone who can put some real effort into identifying something like that. So it would be for composting and for hazardous waste as well, and would kind of come out as a strategy for the town. And kind of as a subsection of waste, kind of we'd like to continue to identify ways to reduce single-use plastic and single-use waste. Another section or kind of topic that we had been considering is net zero greenhouse gas emissions. So the goal would be to achieve net zero energy usage and greenhouse gas emissions for municipal facilities. And the town is already kind of on the way to that, there's two initiatives that are already underway, which you guys might know. The New Brunswick Smart Energy Communities Accelerator Program and the Greenhouse Gas Emissions and Energy Study. So I guess the main recommendation is to, first of all, make a pledge to achieve net zero by kind of a specified timeline. We were thinking 2040 or earlier. And then kind of the second recommendation is to really focus on completing those strategies that are coming out of those two initiatives that are already underway. And then the third kind of recommendation there would be to help provide education and awareness for the town, because these are awesome initiatives and there's a lot out there, but I don't think that a lot of people in the community are really super aware of what's going on that front. And the third main topic that we've been discussing has been green spaces. So the main goal would be to increase the resilience of impacts to climate change and maintain ecosystem health and biodiversity. So the two kind of sub-subjects that are coming out of that are ecologically responsible development and kind of to address invasive species which are already established in town here. There are quite a few in there listed in the document that I think that you guys have access to. In terms of ecologically responsible development, the big one is maintaining 30-meter buffers on new developments, just to kind of keep connectivity between natural spaces and allow the biodiversity to kind of maintain their space as well. And then under that as well is to identify grants, and we'll kind of continue on this as well, but to identify some grants and funding to potentially compile an inventory of local flora and fauna, just to have, you know, a really good idea of what we have going on right now, and to be able to use that in further developments and kind of keep that in mind. In terms of invasive species, the first kind of next step is to partner with the New Brunswick Invasive Species Council. So we've been in touch with them and they're really eager to, they've got educational materials and stuff that we'd like to kind of get a hold of and help distribute around so that people know, you know, what they're looking at is invasive and kind of potentially how to address that or who to contact in terms of those things. And then to identify potential funding sources again to develop an invasive species control program. So some of them are pretty prolific and can take over and kind of decimate these natural spaces that we really want to maintain. So we'll definitely keep on that track, looking for funding to kind of keep those things under control. So the ask essentially is two things. The first, like I mentioned, the feasibility study for the composting and the composting options. And the second would be just a little bit of money for educational and outreach materials to kind of get the word out about what the committee is working on, some of the things that the town has been doing, like those 2 greenhouse gas things that are already going on, get the word out, and to help with those information that the Invasive Species Council has to get those out into the community to keep them aware. That's all I've got.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
First of all, it's our first time having a presentation in this venue, so I feel like we're really on top of you. So I don't know. We'll figure out the logistics of that. So I apologize that it feels like we're kind of looking down on you. So it's, but it's certainly. I will say that this is probably. In my time on council from a committee, one of the most professional reports that I've seen submitted. And I think we can all speak to that, especially Deputy Mayor or Councillor Gumashel, who's been on council before. I guess my question for you is a little bit, and we'll pass over to council, is a little bit on timing on this funding. Generally speaking, kind of amounts like this we would do as part of our annual budget process, which we're going to be commencing very, very soon. I know that Mr. Spear is already well into it, but I was wondering if this is something that was approved kind of for next year, or that would be too late, or is this something that you're hoping to get underway kind of for the fall or for the winter?
Yeah, no, we're going to keep going with what we're doing, and just whenever we just wanted to get this to you guys before those conversations kind of started. So just to keep it in the back of your mind that these sorts of things would be really valuable, I think that's fine. We're not looking to get started next week or anything.
Okay, perfect. That's a breath of fresh air. Thank you very much for the time. Thank you for the presentation. I'll pass it over to any member of council that would like to add anything, or perhaps maybe even Councillor Blanchard's been a regular representative on that committee, so perhaps he would like to add on anything. So at this point, I'll open up the floor.
Yeah. Well, did you want me to jump in, Mr. Mayor? You want to...
Absolutely.
Okay, no, sure, great, thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you, Kaylin, for the presentation. Certainly, as Mayor Henderson mentioned, I've been a part of the committee prior to my being elected as a council member, so I was there. I've been on with the group for a while. I just want to commend everyone on that committee, a very an excellent group of individuals, really engaged and just really committed to the town and trying to do the best by the town through the environment. Just a couple things I did want to mention about the report itself for the benefit of council. The recommendations that are made and the pillars, I guess, whatever you want to call it, there are projects sort of identified by the committee and by Kaylin here in the report. A few of those actually are mentioned directly in the municipal plan. So if you have read through the municipal plan, composting is one of the things mentioned in our municipal plan that was passed back in 2020 with a lot of consultation from the town and others. So I think it's important to remember that. In addition to that, green spaces. So it's actually a really timely thing, I think, given what we're going through right now with regards to development and housing and things of that nature. So within the green spaces, and again, this is all in the municipal plan as well, it does identify a goal of 10% of green spaces within the town. Currently, according to the plan as of 2020, we're at 6%. So again, these are things to keep in mind as we look at developments. Also, with new developments and any new subdivisions or plans like that, the municipal plan also identifies that a minimum of 8% of that new development should be set aside for public use. And when they talk about public use, they're really speaking specifically to parks and green spaces. So again, a way to add to that overall total. But again, I just want to put this in the back of council's mind as we look to approve and we look forward to some of these developments. These are things that we should keep in mind as per the municipal plan. And I think, so yeah, specifically on the composting and the green spaces, I think those are the two big ones that I wanted to mention because they are directly relatable and tieable right back into our municipal plan. So I think those are things to keep in mind. And as Kaylin had mentioned, in terms of the timing of this particular presentation, we were really anticipating the new budget cycle and wanted to sort of put this into to council's mind as a possible something to possibly be funded through the budget. So again, as Kaylin had mentioned, not looking for it right away, but certainly as part of the next budget cycle, that's when we'll be looking to sort of move things forward on this. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. Any other member of council? Councillor Hurdle. Sorry, Councillor Gumashel. Councillor Hurdle.
Sorry for jumping in red Eddie there. Thank you very much. Also, thank you very much, Kaylin, for your presentation. There's a lot to look forward to here, and I'm sure I don't speak for myself when I say a lot to get excited about as well. And Councillor Blanchard touched on this a moment ago, and maybe this has already been answered, and if so, I apologize. But regarding composting, my one question for that would be, is there any information available for how many residential households in town currently compost on their own? Versus those who don't but would be interested in a community approach?
That's a really good question. I don't have an answer.
No problem.
I think if anyone in the community might know, I think Mr. Castell would have a great idea. He seems to be the expert. Yes, there you have it.
We have been in touch with him and would definitely work closely with him on the composting front for sure.
Yeah, he might have an idea because he put most of the composters around the town. So, but he's a great master composter and he's always educating. Like he just came back from Sussex, I think, where he did a composting session. So he'd be great to keep on your group, that's for sure.
Perfect. Councillor Hurdle, you good?
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Gumashel, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No worries. Thank you, Your Worship. Echo your comments too in congratulating Ms. Mauer and Councillor Blanchard on putting together a wonderful report, very professional and very helpful to council. When I read it, though, I was a bit surprised not to see any commentary on the question of whether or not the town should be declaring a climate emergency. That was something that was on the registers of the previous council and languished in the registers for a couple of years, and we had deferred it to the environmental committee. So I was a bit surprised not to see that, and hoping that that your committee, I know you're all volunteers, but I hope that looking at the question of whether or not it would be advantageous for St. Andrews to declare a climate emergency in the same fashion as other communities in Brunswick, like Dalhousie, I believe, has declared a climate emergency, and some other cities across Canada, with a view to any possible funding to assist with climate change for municipalities that have indeed declared a climate emergency. So that was a bit wordy, but it's really late here. So thank you, and I hope you can add that to your plan.
I see Councillor Blanchard as a response to that, Councillor Gumichel.
Yeah, and not as much a response. I want to thank Councillor Gumichel for bringing that up. We actually did discuss this at the committee. It wasn't part of the report, but it's actually on my radar, my agenda, as something that I would like to bring forward to this council. And I'm glad to hear it would have your support. I know a number of communities across Canada have done so, and it does, while not necessarily moving. I mean, it does help to move things forward, absolutely, and it actually helps to sort of direct any decisions that council might take with regards to climate. At the same time, it also, if enough municipalities put those types of declarations forward, it applies pressure to provincial and federal governments, because we recognize that alone municipalities we do not have the funds, we do not have the budgets to deal with some of these issues and some of these problems, because they are on, it's a larger scale. It's a much bigger scale that we're talking about here, and the amount of money required. I mean, we look at the wharf, for example. Some of the changes being made there are the result of climate change, right? In terms of raising the heights and things of that nature. We on our own could not afford to do those things, and we do require the help of other levels of government. And again, with enough municipalities declaring these types of climate emergencies, it does apply pressure on them to sort of step up to the plate, if you will, and provide the additional funds. So regardless of the government, or one government in power versus the next, as they sort of cycle through, as long as the pressure continues to be applied, I think we can hope that they'll come through. So thank you for that, Councillor Gumichel, and maybe look for it in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm looking. I think everybody's good. I just wanted to, sorry, Mr. Spear. Yep, go ahead.
Quick comments, Your Worship.
Absolutely.
I guess the first is maybe when you're looking for the money towards the consultant, I think it's a fair request. I just want to maybe make sure you're getting what you're asked for, that it seems low for what you're asking for. So I think I'd be interested to see what it is, because we'd be looking for kind of a fairly complete plan, I think, instead of just tipping our toes in. So if you know what I mean. So maybe talk to people, because it may be something worth going to the Environmental Trust Fund early next year if there's something in order to do that. The other thing that maybe to take back to the committee just to discuss, the buffering, expanded buffering is interesting to me, because although you're creating more buffering space, you're using more space for separate developments. So to me, it's why you get stuff closer and build up more instead of creating all these buffer. That it seems to me that over a given area, you might have the potential to waste more land, but that's me without seeing it in practice. So I think that'd be worth a discussion of maybe having, see if there are best practices, which I'm assuming there are in other jurisdictions, and how that's accomplished. Because when I read that, it seemed to be counterintuitive, what modern planning is. But again, I understand the need for more green spaces. Just if you're putting more buildings spread further apart, I'd have concerns that it's going to end up using more land. That's all. That's it for now, Your Worship. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you. I think maybe a good follow-up would be for you with the committee just to revisit the particular ask on the consultant fee and see if they can't find maybe a number that makes sense, because we don't want to the point is approve a budget that won't be adequate for the particular initiative.
That's right, Your Worship. I guess it's just depending on how deep detail they want to go. If it's something that is going to lay out, say, a roadmap to do an institutional style of pickup, say residential, similar to a residential garbage pickup, it's probably going to be a lot more in depth than the $5,000 would be involved, it'd be my guess.
Thank you very much. So I will say this, though, is first of all, thanks for getting out in front of it for the budget time. if the town of St. Andrews wants to have committees, and especially committees of volunteers that are engaged in making an impact, we have to help give them the tools and resources in order to make impact. And this is a very reasonable budget request. So thank you for presenting it. And we look forward to following up with you during budget time. So thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you, guys.
All right, at this time, we're going to get into the approval of minutes from previous meetings. The first one I'll be looking for is the minutes of the 210803 regular meeting of council on August 3rd, 2021 at 7 p.m. Looking for a mover to approve the minutes as circulated. I see Councillor Heenan, a seconder. I see Councillor Hurdle. Okay, any additions, changes to those minutes? Got a lot of places to look in here. Seeing none, okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of those minutes, please signify by saying aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, those minutes have been adopted. The next minutes are the 210809 special meeting of council on August 9th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Looking for a mover to approve those minutes. I see Deputy Mayor Akaji, a seconder. I see Councillor Blanchard. Any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye. Okay, that's everybody. Those have been carried. The next minutes are the 210830 special meeting of council on August 30th, 2021 at 6:30. Look for a mover for those minutes. Okay, I see Councillor Heenan, a seconder, Councillor Hurdle. Any changes to those minutes? And okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of those minutes, please signify by saying aye. Okay, sorry about that, Councillor Blanchard. I think he was in. Were you? Did you have a question on those, or just approving?
No, just approving.
That's okay. I forgive you. In fairness to you, there's a lot of places to look, right? Zoom with the Hollywood Squares is a lot
I
easier.
thought you had called the question. I was
And
just putting my
that was
hand up for
everybody. So those have been approved. And the last set of minutes would be the minutes of the 210830 Committee of Council meeting that we had last week on August 30th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. Looking for a mover, Deputy Mayor Akaji. Looking for a seconder. I saw Councillor Blanchard. And any changes, additions, alterations to those minutes? Seeing no hands, so we'll call the question for the final minutes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. And anyone opposed? And that was everybody. So those have been carried. At this particular time, we will get into communications, and we do have our staff reports. At this point, I'll pass it over to our CAO, Mr. Chris Spear, to present the CAO report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the opportunity to present the staff report as of today's date. I'm suffering from shock when I realize that the summer has flown by and we are 106 days away from Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody. On behalf of the town staff, I would like to thank council for the opportunity to summarize the activities of your local government. Under council, realizing that the many challenges the lack of housing is causing, it is a priority of council and staff are using a significant time and resources to follow that initiative. Last week, we issued a request for proposal for approximately 5 acres of land off of Champlain Avenue, adjacent to Anchor's Landing, for submission in October. We are also actively working on an RFP on town-owned land below Diana Drive. Mayor and staff are also pursuing an opportunity for land behind the New Brunswick Community College. We are following many avenues, hoping to expand our inventory significantly over the next 2 to 3 years. We have also released an RFP regarding a fitness facility at the arena. The hope is with the pandemic more understood and the town willing to contribute equipment, we will get some more interest than we did last year. Before council later tonight are nominations for the Planning Advisory Committee. Last council felt it was important to bring this back locally as there were several issues that affected the character of St. Andrews and that ideally residents should be deciding on it. We thank the several individuals who let their names stand, but we have more applicants than available slots, so not all will be given opportunity to serve. After the PAC is established, staff will arrange training sessions a little later in the month, which is actually next Wednesday, September 15th. There is a road closure bylaw that is slated for first reading tonight. Specifically, it relates to an undeveloped road that shows up on land records but has never been used. Council has been approached by adjacent landowners about acquiring that portion since it appears it'll never be needed for access to properties. This is the first step in declaring council has no interest in that land, and there will be an opportunity for the public to provide input. There is a new bylaw for council's consideration called the Encroachment Bylaw. If passed, that will empower staff to enter into simple agreements around the use of public spaces for private use. Examples would include driveways, patios, accessibility ramps, etc. Currently, all of these go before council for discussion and can take 4 to 6 weeks to resolve what is typically considered a minor matter. We are starting budget discussions again in a couple of weeks, actually next week. This is an important time as it provides direction for both council and staff for the next year and medium-term planning over the next 5 years. We should discuss with council some early public consultation to allow citizens to provide input and new ideas. Finally, at the committee meeting last week, council recognizes that the newly recognized National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is an important time to reflect on the atrocities imposed on survivors of the residential school system. In addition to granting employees the time off, we are also having an educational time to allow the story of why this is important to be told by our own Deputy Mayor Akaji. Under administration, Mayor Henderson and staff were recently given the opportunity to meet with Minister Alain of the Department of Local Government and Local Governance Reform. We brought in a few issues important to council to his attention so that he can be an advocate for us in government. The top 2 discussion points were local government reform and our housing initiatives, including acquiring property behind the new Brunswick Community College for a rental complex that could house those with more modest needs like students, young workers, and others that struggle to find affordable housing. Both jointly and separately, the council and staff have met with multiple developers expressing an interest in the town. We are following and encouraging all leads and working with our partners at the Regional Service Commission, trying to make the perceived red tape as effortless as possible while still practicing due diligence. The first meeting of the courthouse system seems to have been a success. It was a real team effort as CHEO, Public Works, and the town staff, all staff were all instrumental in making it happen. We also appreciate Civic Trust and the Charlotte County Archives who allowed us to inconvenience them. Seating is somewhat limited, so larger meetings may have to be held at the arena. Locals and residents may notice some work going on in and around Sheriff Andrew's house this fall. The province is refurbishing the facility to ensure it remains watertight and to minimize groundwater from seeping or gushing into the structure. It is ironic how a necessity of life is also the destroyer of property. Senior staff to work with department heads to conduct performance reviews on all full-time staff of the town. It was a beneficial process to allow all sides to express their goals and concerns and provide feedback on supervisor-employee relations. We will continue to conduct these on an annual basis with more frequent feedback throughout the year. The clerk met with the Environmental Advisory Committee, who has put together a well-written report for council's review and who has already presented it tonight. The town-initiated appreciation days held on August 28th was a success. From the fireman's breakfast early in the morning to the fireworks after dark, it was a fun-filled day, more focused on being together and cultural experiences than activities. The volunteer awards were held with the Jen Russell Band providing the afternoon entertainment. We saw a different side of our provincial chief medical officer who showed cool decision-making through the pandemic, but let out her artistic side that Saturday afternoon. The event showcasing volunteers was made possible through many volunteers, including the fire department, who are in action from pre-dawn to well after dusk. We also thank Kingsbury Gardens, who sponsored the afternoon event. Services. It was a busy month for bylaw enforcement and the clerk as we go through the processes related to dangerous and unsightly premises on a property in town, keeping up with enforcement compliance and several parking violations. The operations manager has been working on the 5-year capital plan for the budget, including doing inspections on some of our assets to determine major maintenance or replacement that may be needed over the next few years. He also worked with a subcontractor to video several storm and sewer lines to see the condition of the in-ground infrastructure. Due to the uncertainty the pandemic brought during budget time, the museums in the town were left with a shorter season and have been closed until next year. However, they had a good summer and adjusted their tours to keep visitors safe. The Ross Museum had the grand opening of the Bannister exhibit, which will be carried into next year. We also began the process of planning for the Christmas Open House, an annual event that brings together over 100 volunteers who bake, cook, host, or perform. There's still a bit of uncertainty around the current COVID numbers, so we plan with the knowledge it could be postponed for another year. Excuse me. The Ross Library was able to offer children's services again this summer, where the reading club kicked into full gear and 41 children read 1,224 books. It should also be noticed the library is giving away passes to King's Landing in September, limited to 1 per library card. This is a great opportunity to visit one of the premier heritage and cultural attractions within our province and to educate our younger generation on a portion of the roots of New Brunswick. Our combined work crews had an extremely busy summer as the grass grew fast and tall while trying to maintain the asphalt program around so much traffic. They also prepped the square for, worked during, and came in and cleaned up after Appreciation Day to keep the town looking well and ready for the next day activities. Senior and water department staff met with the provincial representatives over our blue-green algae protocols. It was mostly new staff within the department who wanted an opportunity to understand what we are doing and provide recommendations on testing and reporting. They have taken it back to review and to assist us to update the plan. To date, although there are visible blooms in the lake, there have been near nil readings in the intake. In conclusion, council and staff have a lot of initiatives before us as we move forward together over the next few years. The public should appreciate an engaged council who takes the needs and growth potential of St. Andrews both seriously, personally, and fully consults with the public and staff to generate discussion, debate, and direction to follow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spear. Anything from the financial report that you want to highlight at this particular time? I know we'll be diving into it in a series of meetings in the near future, but is there anything that you'd like to bring to council's attention at this particular time?
Maybe 2 things, Your Worship. As the council's probably noticed, we have a fairly healthy surplus, but that's 2 big items contributing to that. We sold the old medical center in Sophia Street, which has to show up as general revenue. And gratefully, the province gave us 100,000 of unbudgeted COVID relief money early in the winter that hadn't been budgeted for. So that's about $350,000 that goes towards the overall surplus, and why it seems to be sticking out so much. But again, most of that can be put into capital reserve funds to be used for future capital, would be staff's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spear. With our asset management plan and as well as council priorities, it's safe to say those extra funds are greatly needed. I'll pass it at this time over to any questions from any member of council for Mr. Spear. Seeing none. So at this point, I'll look for a motion to accept the staff reports and financial reports as presented. I see Deputy Mayor Akagi. I see a seconder with Councillor Heenan. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the staff report motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is everybody. So those have been approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Spear, for that detailed summary of yet another month in beautiful St. Andrews. At this point, we're going to get into the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws. I will pass the floor over to the Finance and Administration Portfolio Manager, which would be Deputy Mayor Akagi.
Your Worship, I think Councillor Gumashell wants to declare.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spear. I'd like to recuse myself at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first one is reference number FA 210807. And it's extended leave of absence for Councillor Gumashell. The background is as follows. Councillor Gumashell has requested an extended leave of absence from the town from July 14th, 2021 to October 22nd, 2021. As such, a motion of council is needed to approve a leave greater than 2 months. As per Local Governance Act, Section 50, bracket 1, a vacancy results in a council when G, except in the case of illness, with the authorization of the council, a member is one, I guess that would be one, absent from the local governance for more than 2 months at one time, or two, absent from 4 or more consecutive regular meetings of council. So the motion is this, that council approve the extended leave of absence for Councillor Kurt Gomichel from the town of St. Andrews from July 14th, 2021 to October 22nd, 2021, as per the Local Governance Act, Section 51, G. And I so move this.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Could I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Neal. At this point, we'll open it up for discussion. Okay, seeing none, so I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is everybody, so that has been approved. The next one, Deputy Mayor. Perfect.
Sorry?
He is back. He can hear us, so he can continue.
Okay. Reference number FA 210808. It's a policy for waiving or reducing fees for recreation facilities. And the background is this. The town of St. Andrews has drafted a new policy, P-21-01, a policy for waiving or reducing fees for recreational facilities. This policy is to assist the not-for-profit, charitable, minor sport, and service club organizations requesting a reduction or waiving of fees for use of municipal facility space. The policy ensures consistency, equity, and transparency in addressing the request for reduction or waiver of fees for the rental/leasing of municipal facility space and equipment. Provided with this report is a copy of the policy for council to review. And therefore, the motion is that council approves the town of St. Andrews policy for waiving or reducing fees for use of town-owned recreational facilities, P-21-01. And I so move.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And once again, we'll be looking for a seconder. I see Councillor Heenan's hand. And now we're open for discussion. Any comments on this particular policy? Seeing,
Oh, if I may, Your Worship. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Sober second thought. The clerk and I worked on this. We came up with some stuff as I was reading over the weekend. Under ineligible activities, it says an event that or a program that requires an admission fee. Could we add or where a fee is collected by a service provider? So for instance, I could be instructor, so there's not technically an admission fee, but I could be providing something, or there could be like an ongoing one-time fee for 10 things.
does any member of council have any concerns over that addition?
Not at all.
I think we could call that a friendly amendment. If you want to add that in.
And
And there's another one.
there's just one other that
Okay.
maybe we need. There's an issue that comes up occasionally because staff doesn't work there over the summer, like on the weekends, that people want to use it on the weekends, and there's staff time involved and overtime. And we've had lately a couple of people asked to have that waived, which is significant time. I think from staff's perspective, we'd rather have council, like anything over and above, just the use of the space for extra cost should come back to council as an assistance grant or in-kind grant. But I just wanted to see how far you want to allow staff to go and stuff like that.
I'll be looking for council's direction, but I actually think that that's something that could be CAO's discretion as long as you're within your annual budget of salary. Like I don't think why we would micromanage that. Maybe I've got a different view, but I don't think we want every particular request to come back before council. What's council's wishes on that one?
Agreed.
It sounds like everybody agrees. as long as you're okay with that, Mr. Spear, I'm fine. You know, obviously if it becomes something that's out of control and it's threatening your budget, then at that point we could have
Yeah.
a greater strategy, but we trust your judgment on that one.
Yep,
Good. Okay. So at this point, there was just that one friendly amendment, I believe. So we'll officially go to vote on this one. All in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is everybody, and that policy has passed. And the next one, Deputy Mayor.
The next one is reference number FA 210809. National Day for Truth and Reconciliation Day for September the 30th. The Government of Canada recently passed legislation to make September 30th the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This day is an important step in the reconciliation process. It provides an opportunity to recognize and commemorate the tragic history and ongoing legacy of residential schools and to honor their survivors, their families, and communities. In the past, only provincial stat days have been approved for the town, so the past practice would not be to observe it. However, there are a few other facts to consider. With the nature of the stat day around our relationships with our Indigenous nations, it has heightened sensitivity compared to other stat days. Due to collective agreements, Blacks Harbor, St. George, and St. Stephen will be observing that day. Banks and other institutions, UNB, will be closed. However, schools may be open. Most municipalities are still discussing it, but moving in the direction to provide the holiday. This day will be used for reflection and learning regarding truth and reconciliation. So the motion, it reads that council adopts the newly formed National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in the town of St. Andrews for the purposes of learning and reflection. And I so move this day.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Could I have a seconder for that? I see Councillor Hurdle. That was quick. I appreciate that. So we'll open up for discussion, but after this motion, I will pass the floor over to Deputy Mayor Akaji just to talk about an event happening at the Tracy Dean Bird Platform on September 30th. But before that, opening this motion up for any debate, any conversation, anything that you want to add. I see Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship. I just want to tell Council that Sussex Council passed it as a National Day of Reconciliation. So I just thought that was an interesting, it passed today. So
Thank you very much.
just FYI.
Appreciate
Thank
that,
you.
Councillor Heenan. Any other member of council?
Your Worship.
Deputy Mayor Akaji.
It's not that it wasn't celebrated before, because in every Indigenous nation in Canada, there was always an orange t-shirt day for residential school survivors. And for those graves that they found, they have always been celebrating. So this isn't something new. This is what the government has decided will be Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is a prominent day, September 30th. I just want everyone to know that this has always been celebrated within the Indigenous communities.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Any other member of council? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is everybody. So that has been carried. Before I pass it over to Deputy Mayor Akaji, I just wanted to say, although I appreciate the background, it's kind of regardless what the background is when it comes to who else is doing it. I think as a community, it is 100% the right thing to do. And I think we've got a long way to go towards a reconciliation. But I think that the first step is to reflect and acknowledge. And I think the fact that the municipality of St. Andrews has deemed it a holiday for town staff, I think it's a very important thing to do. So thank you for your support on this motion. At this time, I'll pass it over to the Deputy Mayor just to talk a little bit about an event that will be happening that day.
Thank you, Your Worship. I got together with Judith Moses, who happens to live in Shamcook, and she was on the Truth and Reconciliation Board that started this. And so the event, we decided that we would have a solemn event And it will be on September 30th. And we decided that we wanted everyone to be involved. And so it will happen rain or shine. So bring your rain gear if it should rain, but we're praying for sunny weather. And the time will be from 5 o'clock to 6 p.m. And it will be at the newly opened Tracy Dean's Bird Platform on Indian Point, which is on Indigenous territory. It will be a walk for reconciliation, and a free will collection or offering will be taken. These funds we will donate to the local St. Stephen's University to develop a new focus on reconciliation studies class. So that's where the money will be going. There will be an opening, a smudge will be offered. Judith Moses will speak regarding Truth and Reconciliation. Kate Akaji will speak on Orange T-shirt Day. Students hopefully will be there, and we have baskets that we hope that they will take along and collect the donations from people. We have an idea of placing a flower at the bird platform, Tracy Dean's Bird Platform, in remembrance of the residential school souls. We ask for 2 minutes of silence. And finally, we will walk around Indian Point, leaving the bird sanctuary, going all the way around Indian Point and coming back to the bird sanctuary. And then we ask for you to leave in silence. We think that will be the most impact. And we thank you, Waliwan, Walilin, to everyone that will come. And we hope everybody will come. It is not just for Indigenous peoples. It is for everyone who wishes to be there to, and we don't want to call it a celebration because it's not a celebration, it's a remembrance. And we want it to be a very solemn thinking occasion for the people who passed away during residential schools. And so we ask that everybody wear an orange shirt of something. You do not need to have the traditional one that says "Every Child Matters." A simple orange T-shirt will suffice. A sea of orange would be lovely to see in St. Andrews. We've done it before with Canada Day, and now with this Truth and Reconciliation Day, we'd like to see a sea of orange and everybody come out for it. We have a few asks to the town, and we have a few asks to the Algonquin Hotel for golf carts in order for people who cannot or unable to walk the whole distance. We hope that we will have enough golf carts that you could still participate. So please join us on that day for the Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th between 5 and 6 p.m. at Indian Point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for your efforts in leading this initiative, and also for all your efforts in making us aware of the significance of the day. So thank you for all that you do. Unfortunately, I do have to bridge the gap to talk about credit facilities. I believe you're going to recuse yourself this time, Councillor Hurdle, and then we'll just give him a moment, and then Deputy Mayor will go to the next motion. But once again, thank you very much for organizing that particular event ceremony. I look forward to personally being there, and I'm sure other members of council will be joining me and staff. All right, he's recused, so at this time we can move ahead.
Okay. The next reference number is FA 210810, and it is 2021 credit facilities with the Scotiabank. Council needs, and the background goes like this. Council needs to make motions annually to continue our relationship with Scotiabank. Below are the credit facilities being offered for 2021. Operating loans under the Local Governance Act. Municipalities are allowed to set up short-term operating loans to cover their day-to-day expenses. The amounts are as follows below. General operating fund, 4% of the general operating fund budget, or $206,315. The utility operating fund, 50% of the utility operating budget, or $483,225. The above amounts are not taken out all at once. They are only used as needed to cover expenses until all the tax revenue or utility revenue is received. Term loans. The following loans have already been authorized by council. It's in its application to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, as well as the board itself. These term loans allow us to finance the project until the work is completed and debentures can be used. There are a total of 8 such loans to a total of $3,584,000, $950,000 of which is interim funding, outlined in motion 2. Visa, currently we only have one Visa card in the CAO's name. It has a total limit of $10,000 and is primarily used for travel reservations and online purchases. So the motion is this: be it moved that the council approve the mayor or deputy mayor and the chief administrative officer or the assistant treasurer are hereby authorized to borrow on behalf of the town of St. Andrews from the Bank of Nova Scotia from time to time by way of a promissory note, a sum or sums not exceeding any one time $206,315 to meet the current expenditures of the general operating fund. Sorry. $483,225 to meet current expenditures of the utility operating fund of the corporation for the year of 2021. And I so move this.
Thank you. A long one. Appreciate you reading that. A seconder for that motion. I see Councillor Neal. Okay, at this point, we'll open this first one up to discussion before we move on to the next motion. Okay, we're good there. I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is everybody. So that has been carried. We'll move to the next motion, Deputy Mayor.
So the second motion, be it moved that council approve the mayor or deputy mayor and the chief administrative officer or the assistant treasurer to hereby be authorized to borrow on behalf of the town of St. Andrews from the Bank of Nova Scotia from time to time by way of a promissory note or a sum or sums not exceeding at any one time $140,000 towards the resurfacing of roads, $300,000 towards the reconditioning of the Steel Water Reservoir, $330,000 towards the water and sewer main renewals on King Street and Sophia Street, $10,000 towards a backup water pump for the water treatment plant, $106,000 towards UV chamber upgrades at the water treatment plant, an aerator blower unit for the sewage lagoon, a portable generator for the lift stations, and commercial water meters. $48,000 towards the replacement of the concrete walkway at the arena, $600,000, including $200,000 of interim funding towards trail improvements, $2,050,000, including $750,000 of interim funding towards the reconditioning of the Steel Water Reservoir. And I so move this.
You looking for a seconder for that motion as well? I'm staring at the screen to give them one. There we go. Councillor Blanchard caught one on the screen. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, so I will call the question on that one as well. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is everybody, and that one has been carried. I believe your last one.
And the last motion is, be it moved that council approve acceptance of the Scotiabank Visa credit card with a limit of $10,000. And I so move.
And a seconder on that one. Councillor Heenan, and discussion on this one.
Yes.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Councillor Heenan.
Yes, your worship. I'm just wondering if $10,000 needs to be bumped up a little. Is that suffice, Mr. Spears?
We don't want them leaving town.
Thank you, Your Worship. In most cases, it is, Councillor. Once in a while, we tend to buy, for instance, picnic tables that we've purchased or purchased from an unusual retailer, so we had to use our credit card, so we had to do 2 units. But that's unusual. I guess in today's day, if we increase it, just increases our risk that someone could defraud us. So we just learned to live with that limit, and if we need some more, we'll make other arrangements. But thank you anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Spear. Any other discussion on that one? Councillor Blanchard.
Just a quick question. It speaks a bit, I guess, in the background, saying that we only have one current Visa card. This is to purchase. This is to apply for a second Visa card. Is that what I'm to infer here? Or is it sort of a renewal of an existing one?
Renewal of the existing one, we have to annually put this through at the request of the bank. So it's just the same card over and over. It actually is a total limit of 10,000, which we could spread across several people, but the town traditionally has not carried Visa cards. That's probably the highest risk thing from the employment standard. And like I said, just in today's world with internet buying, you kind of have to have one, but that's why it's isolated to just the CAO. And that's been the practice now for 15 or 20 years.
And not that anyone's questioning that, but we do have a process in place where once a month, Mr. Spear and I actually review that just as for checks and balances to make sure everything is authorized through him. Any other questions on that one? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No one opposed. That has been carried as well. All right, thank you very much. We'll give a moment for Councillor Hurdle to return, and then we'll be switching over to the Public Works Committee, which will be Councillor Blanchard. Just I'll let you know, Councillor Blanchard, when Councillor Hurdle returns.
Worship.
Thank you for all those motions. There was a lot of reading there. All right, Councillor Hurdle is back. Councillor Blanchard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Reference number PW210808. Additional paving request for the back of the St. Andrews Fire Hall for 2021. Background on that, during the last budget time, the council allowed for $313,000 in paving, which included the boat ramp, half the fire hall parking lot, as well as new surfaces on parts of Edward, Sophia, and King Streets. After a competitive bidding process, the projects came to $113,000 under budget. Staff is requesting the council allow for another $40,000 to be spent from that budget towards finishing the second half of the parking lot of the fire hall. So the motion is that $40,000 will be allotted from the 2021 paving budget to replace the back portion of the parking lot and driveway of the St. Andrews Fire Department. So moved by myself.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blanchard. A seconder for that motion. I see Deputy Mayor Akaji, and we will open the floor for anyone for debate. Seeing none, so we'll move ahead for the particular motion. All those in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is everybody, so that motion has been approved. I will at this point, I meant to mention earlier, I got caught up in all the disclosures, conflict of interest. I myself will declare conflict on PW210804. So I'll ask Deputy Mayor Akaji to at this point take over the floor, and I'll just recuse myself for a moment and be right back.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just give him a few minutes to exit stage right. All right, Councillor Blanchard, if you would please continue on this motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Akaji. So reference number PW210804. Subject is Bylaw 21-05, a bylaw respecting the stopping up and permanent closure of part of Victoria Terrace Street. So the background for this, the town has received a request to permanently close a portion of Victoria Terrace Street for a new housing development to be located at PID 151-88543. To close the portion of Victoria Terrace Street, council has to implement a road closure bylaw. Provided with this motion report is a copy of bylaw 21-05, a bylaw respecting the stopping up and permanent closure of part of Victoria Terrace. So the motion is that council grant leave for the first reading of bylaw 21-05, a bylaw respecting the stopping up and permanent closure of part of Victoria Terrace Street in the town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
I would like to have a seconder. Councillor Hurdle. Thank you. Any comments or problem with that?
Excuse
So-
me, Deputy
go
Mayor,
ahead.
do we have to read the, oh,
After it's
okay,
approved,
I'm sorry.
and it's after both motions are approved, correct? Oh, just one motion. Okay, so I will call for the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Contraminded? That's everyone, so it's carried unanimously. Thank you. And I will go to the first reading, which is the bylaw. Bylaw number 21-05, a bylaw respecting the stopping up and permanent closure of part of Victoria Terrace Street. Be it enacted by the Council of the Town of St. Andrews under the authority vested in it under the Local Governance Act 10(1) enacts as follows. The section of town streets named below shall be stopped up, permanently closed, and shall no longer be a public thoroughfares. The portion of the portion of Victoria Terrace Street described as follows, beginning at the northeast corner of the property having PID number 01323310, going thence westerly along the northern sidelines of properties having PID number 01323310 and 15191844 and 01323302. To the eastern sideline of a property having PID number 15198385. Going thence northerly along the said eastern sideline to the southern sideline of property having PID number 1588543. Going thence easterly along said southern sideline to the eastern sideline of the said property. Thence southerly to a straight line to the place of the beginning. Being more practically shown on the plan attached as Schedule A. First reading this, what day is it? The 8th day of September 2021. This is the first reading. Do I have to, and now it's the second motion, Councillor Blanchard? Did we lose
Thank you,
him?
Deputy Mayor. So second motion, that council sets the date of Monday, September 27th, 2021, 6:30 PM at the courthouse at 123 Frederick Street for a public hearing of objections to bylaw 21-05, a bylaw respecting the stopping up and permanent closure of part of Victoria Terrace Street. It's so moved by myself.
And I need a seconder, Councillor Heenan. Thank you. Any comments? And we'll go to the question. All those in favor? Say aye. And contrary minded? It's approved. Now do I read it a second time? Okay, just checking. Thank you very much. You can ask the mayor to return. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Blanchard, by the way.
Just one moment here. All right, yeah, I didn't think the next one was a motion. It was in regards to the wharf project final design and discussion, PW 210806. At this point, I'll pass it over to Mr. Spear to lead the conversation on this one.
Thank you, Worship. Maybe a shorter conversation than we'd hoped, but we had met with the design engineers last Thursday or Friday and about moving on to the next design phase. And they wanted to take it back to their people and kind of work out the timing of things because they know that we'd like to be able to maintain the wharf being open in the summer season. And so they just want to make sure in the timing and that all that can be managed. We had some other questions for them that they had to take back, and we're not meeting them again until early October. So that may be more of a just better time to have a discussion with what they've come up with. It should be brought to your attention, the last council, when they looked at the original wharf design, it was that infill option, which in the end they rejected. And because the estimate was done 2 or 3 years ago and they've changed everything, the new estimate is around 5.5 million. That's still a high level estimate. It could come down or go up, I guess, to be honest, over the next few months. But I guess it's a long-lived project. So if you think it's even 500,000 over 50 years, it's not that much money, so to speak, but it's still worth a lot of consideration. So really, it's back to staff to come up with a little more information from the engineers, and we'll bring something to you probably even through a dedicated session time or pre-budget meeting to go over this in a little more detail so we can get a little more input from you on next steps.
Thank you very much. So yeah, obviously, if we're going to do any change of direction, I think we need to go through a presentation and everything like that. But staff's recommendation right now would be status quo, and we'll follow up in the near future. Would that be safe to say?
It is, and the design or anything isn't changing. It's just a matter of they had to go back and really see how long the project was going to take and if it could be completed over the winter. And so to give us a final decision, they were going to go back to contractors who specialize in this to get a better idea of exactly what's entailed. It's about 128 meters of the wharf that has to be removed and rebuilt. So, and ideally it would start like early October and be done by the end of April. So, but got that little thing called winter in between that may make pouring concrete harder. So they wanted to go through and just discuss it and get back to us exactly what the practicality of that is.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. And due to the federal election, I don't think too many funds are flowing these days anyway, unfortunately. I'll pass this over to any other member of council. Any questions for Mr. Spear in regards to this? I see Councillor Gubishal.
Thank you, Your Worship. One significant change that's happened between the approval of this design and the current day is the UN report on with the climate change updates on how much. Sorry, I didn't prepare anything specifically to speak to this. I didn't think this was going to be part of the agenda, but the UN came out with their new climate change report, and they updated their predictions for how much water, how much we can expect the sea level rise to be changing. And so I'm wondering if those new numbers would be incorporated into the new design, and if what we're doing is adequate. I mean, if you ever played in a puddle, you know that if you block up one side of the puddle, the water will go around in behind. And so just wondering if the design is adequate based on what we have so far. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Gubishal. Mr. Spear, is there an opportunity to check back in with the projections that we have to make sure that they're solid? I'd be a little concerned if they're 50-year projections and 6 months later we have to completely change them.
Yeah, Your Worship, this was always planned to be a kind of a two-phased approach. Phase one will probably outdo most of us here because it's a 100-year increase, but we're planning on going up by 0.5 meter. So I will have to revisit those projections. I'm familiar with them, but forget what the modeling says now. So we'll revisit that before we continue.
Did you hear that, Councillor Gubishal? They're going to just revisit it to make sure that they're still accurate.
Yes, thank you. The whole of Water Street there from down by the Yacht Club up as far as William Street is kind of in a low spot. So the more infill that happens at the wharf, the more chance there would be that it could act as an anchor to help rock up the rest of the front street at that low point between the Yacht Club and William Street. Growing up down there, that is a low spot, and just fixing up the wharf, I think, is going to push the water to other spots, and we should be really looking at the whole of the business district down there as something that might need some climate change mitigation. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gumashell and Councilor Gumashell. I do agree that, when you look at St. Andrews by the Sea, the wharf is not the only area in town that is exposed. And this is going to have to be a focus of not just this council, but the next 20 councils in reality, as it's going to be a constant battle when you are St. Andrews by the Sea. Any other member of council? All right. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Spear. I certainly appreciate it. At this time, we will switch gears and go to the Public Safety Committee with Councilor Neal.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is reference number PS 210803. The subject is the Nuisance Deer Hunt 2021. The background reads, the town of St. Andrews has started to receive calls on the application of landowners and hunters for the 2021 Nuisance Deer Hunt. To move forward with the hunt in the town of St. Andrews, council must formally request permission to host the hunt from the Minister of Energy and Resource Development. The motion reads that council moves to request permission from the Provincial Minister of Energy and Resource Development for approval of a 2021 nuisance deer hunt within the town of St. Andrews limits. And that is so moved by myself.
Thank you, Councilor Neal. Seconder for that motion. I see Councilor Heenan. We'll open that one up for discussion. Any comments on that particular motion? Seeing none. Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. That is
Aye.
everybody, and that has been approved again. And just a reminder that that one is just an annual requirement. For this particular motion, there's no changes to the program versus previous years. However, Mr. Spear, Mr. Knopper, myself have been working on another program, and we look forward to in the near future updating council and the public on what that could look like. We will switch now quickly over to Recreation and Community Service Committee, which would be Councilor Gumashell.
Thank you, Worship. On this register, the first one is RCS 210806, and the subject is St. Andrews Outdoor Recreation and Trails Incorporated request for funding trail maintenance. And the background reads, the town of St. Andrews has been provided a request from the St. Andrews Outdoor Recreational and Trails Incorporated for funding to help support trail maintenance and tree planting projects. SORTI is requesting up to $5,000 to support the following projects. 1, trail mowing and fuel costs. 2, brush clearing. 3, installation of 25 butternut trees from the forestry school in Fredericton. And 4, fencing for culverts along trails. And the motion reads, the council moves to support the funding request from the St. Andrews Outdoor Recreation and Trails Incorporated for trail maintenance projects for up to $5,000 for 2021.
Thank you very much, Councilor Gumashell. A seconder for that motion. Councilor Heenan. All right, we'll open that one up for debate. Any comments, questions? Seeing,
Your Worship, just wondering if the $5,000 is it going to cause Mr. Spear in the office any heartache to find because of the budget coming up?
Honestly, no, because of the aforementioned surplus that we're experiencing. It's just typically we'd ask for any items of this amount to be brought forward during this time of the year. So I may talk to SORTI and just if they think they'd like this to continue to be an ongoing thing, that they should put a request in now again for 2022 so that both parties are aware of that that's coming down the pike.
That seems like a fair ask, actually, moving forward to identify this at budget time, but it doesn't take away from the fact that we appreciate all that SORTI does and the fact that they're maintaining so much trails for the town of St. Andrews. That seems like a very fair ask, but I agree with the timing. It should be done during our annual budget time, just like our presenter did today. So we certainly appreciate that. Okay, so any other questions on that one? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that's everybody that has been carried. Thank you, and I believe that's it for that particular portfolio. So at this time, we are switching to planning and economic development, which would be Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Reference number is PED 210805. The subject is Bylaw 21-04, a bylaw respecting encroachment upon public streets in the town of St. Andrews, first reading. Staff has been working on the development of an encroachment bylaw to establish regulations on the use of town space. The bylaw provides an overview of rules, the process of application, approvals, permits, appealing, and penalties. This bylaw, under the authority of council, will provide staff with necessary tools to approve or deny uses in public spaces, including roads, parks, sidewalks, easements, right-of-ways, etc., owned by the town. Provided with this motion is a draft copy of Bylaw 21-04. The action motion that council grants leave for first reading of Bylaw 21-04, a bylaw representing encroachment upon public streets in the town of St. Andrews, and I so move, Your Worship.
Thank you. A seconder? Deputy Mayor Akaji. And for this motion, we'll open it up. I think I see Councillor Blanchard's hand.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. At least the part of it as it sort of
It's
fades in and out
disappearing
of
a
the
little bit.
ether. So I'm working on some magic tricks. Anyways, I do have a question about this. We had a bit of a conversation with regards to sandwich boards at our committee, council of committee meeting there last week. Because signage to me, and signage as we read through, signage is also covered under a separate bylaw under the Regional Service Commission, correct?
Yeah, it's in the zoning bylaw.
In the zoning bylaws,
Zoning.
yeah. So I just want to be clear here because the bylaw as we read here, it still talks about sandwich boards. But it all it talks about any type of signage. So I want to be clear here. Are we then still? And I know we had discussed possibly incorporating at least some portion of this through the zoning bylaw. I just want to make sure that we are not forcing someone to go through two separate processes with regards to signage. I know we talked about the sandwich boards, but even other types of signage, because this talks about anything that projects even into the airspace, correct? Like we're talking about awnings and those types of things, but it also includes signs that do project out. And most of the downtown businesses in the historical business district and down there, most of them have those types of signs that project out from above. So those would be covered under the zoning bylaw under the current. I'm afraid I don't have the actual bylaw, the zoning bylaw in front of me, but those would be covered currently under that, correct? And if we pass this, according to what I'm reading here, they would now be subject to a separate bylaw where they would have to, again, a separate application for those types of signs as well. So I'm just trying to eliminate, reduce the amounts of hoops that people have to jump through or applications they have to put forward. If signage is covered under the zoning bylaw, could we not remove signage from this particular encroachment bylaw? I guess it's kind of what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. We did talk at length about sandwich boards last week. So at this time, I'll pass over to Mr. Knopper. I think he has a response for that particular question.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
Staff and the Service Commission discussed this in regards to the zoning bylaw and the processes that go with the signage. So in the staff report that was provided with your package, we actually have a couple of recommendations for consideration. So in discussion with it, we wanted to put in a definition of what a typical use is, specifically when it talks about the historical business district and the central commercial zone and tourism zone, that a permit will not be needed for typical uses within a 1 meter of the building frontage, which include display racks, small tables and chairs, sandwich board signs, and projecting signs. Any resting or recreational sandwich board signs, projection signs, or product displays that go beyond the 1 meter of the typical use that we're looking at will still need to apply for an encroachment agreement and pay the permit fee. We would also look at accessibility and maneuverability of the location to which the sign would be placed. In addition to that, under the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission's processes for sign permitting, we would actually add an addition to it so that any sign application would also be reviewed under encroachment for town. So we would eliminate an additional step for any encroachment for an application for encroachment. So really, when it comes down to it, we've tried to cover off all those bases. But what it really specifically comes down to is any sign or anything that's being placed on town property that's beyond the 1 meter of a business would have to be looked at for an actual application within that.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Knopper. So in summary, if you're putting it directly in front of your business, you're fine. If you're looking to extend it out onto town land, at that particular point, you would have to go through this process to justify why you may have to put it across on the other side of the sidewalk, for example. Councillor Blanchard, do you have a follow-up question on that one?
I do, yeah, just a quick follow-up. So, and I appreciate the work by town staff on that, because I think that does address the sandwich boards. I think a lot of the businesses in town could certainly abide by that, and it wouldn't be an issue. So they would just have to apply through the typical process under zoning for signage. My question though, with regard, and that's what we'd sort of focused on in our previous meetings, but when we're also talking about those signs that do project out, that would be above a business, which most of the businesses downtown would have. How many of those would extend out beyond the 1 meter distance, I guess is my question. Again, that would be my concern. If they go out like 1.5 meters, and again, I don't know really how far they would go out, but if they did, they would then be subject to both of these bylaws. So I get the sandwich board. I appreciate the work on that. I still have concern about the projecting signs out from the buildings and whether they would go beyond that 1 meter, and whether we may need to extend that a little bit further, let's say for business or for signage that is above ground and extending out. I just don't want them to have to go through a double process especially for existing signage.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard.
If I could add to that, Your Worship, he brings
Absolutely.
up an interesting point with encroachment, and maybe it's not just signs, maybe it's also decks overhanging the sidewalk, patios and decks overhanging the sidewalk could also be added to Councillor Blanchard's concerns. Thank you.
Decks will have to go through this bylaw. It's a permanent structure. When any deck that's done on town land, whether it be 3 inches or over the meter, it has to be approved because it's a permanent building. But I have an assumption on the answer to Councillor Blanchard's comment, but question, but I'll pass it over to Mr. Knopper as he's worked directly on the bylaw.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. In regards to projecting signs, those are already regulated under the zoning bylaw, to which we would classify as still part of the building facade. So, and even if they still have to meet a regulation of how far they can be projecting out, so we wouldn't bother dealing with those projections because we would still classify them as part of the typical use or within the building facade. I don't know if Planner Gopin wants to touch on that any further.
Sure, yeah. So the zoning bylaw actually does not allow signs to be in the right of way at all. So I think there would be an understanding that things within that meter are, that are not permanent are kind of just sort of customary, and they don't need to fall under, I guess, the strict enforcement. But in theory, no sign projecting, flag sign, sandwich board sign can be in the right of way without getting a variance to begin with. And so this makes it a little bit clearer because there's a process already in place. It can allow us just to do in-house variances rather than sending these kinds of things to PAC. If there's already an agreement with the town, then that can serve as an indication of which direction development officers can go in. So I don't have a lot of concerns about this adding extra steps for businesses. I think the 1 meter policy is a good policy, and I mean, maybe there's things that are grandfathered in terms of projecting too far, but I think a typical flag sign is going to go out just about a meter anyways. So yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I think Mr. Knopper summed it up quite well, but from my point of view, from the zoning bylaw, I think there's a clear distinction of what the zoning bylaw is regulating and what the encroachment bylaw is regulating. And there's a very thin middle of the Venn diagram when they cross over. But what we've discussed tonight, that really deals with that section there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Copeland. So what we're hearing is, as long as it conforms to the zoning bylaw, there won't be an extra process for that particular type of sign. If it was outside the zoning bylaw, it's got extra process anyways. It would require a variance.
Yeah.
So your average person that puts a sign up that falls within the zoning bylaw would not have an extra step from this bylaw.
No, because they wouldn't be going into the town right away.
Did that answer the question, Councillor Blanchard?
Yeah, thank you, Worship.
Any other member of Councillor Hurdle?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. As we tend to be, I guess, somewhat limited in our space in terms of new businesses in the downtown core, I think some people will have to be somewhat creative when it comes to where their businesses will be located. So my question is if you didn't have a business that fronted onto, say, Water Street, for example, but yet you wanted to have a sign on town property on Water Street, you would then be required to pass through both application processes. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that's correct. You would have to go through the sign bylaw, and then if you're looking to place it on town land, because it's away from your building within that typical 1 meter use, it would have to go through this process.
Thank you. I guess my only, sorry.
Sorry, I'm dealing with this in another case, but it gets a little more, I'll say problematic, but it's a little more technical because within our zoning bylaw, signs aren't supposed to be off-site. And so you do have to go through the zoning for off-site zoning variances. I guess thinking that usually if the sign's small enough, like a sandwich board sign, just what they call a development officer approval, but if it's something a little bit bigger. So for instance, if the Day Adventure Center people want to put a big sign by the post office saying it, I'm not saying there, I'm just saying if that's a case, it may have to go through the PAC to get approval for that. So that's just the type of thing we're trying to control. And so, it's steps just to ensure that there's not overdevelopment in the town.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess my only comment to that would be, there are several businesses that are moving outside of what we consider where they traditionally were over time. And I guess my fear would just be to make it, if we're making it more arduous for them to get visibility, that'll be the only concern that I would have. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Any other member of council? Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. Again, I'd be in favor of the recommendations that staff had put forward here. The question just was, are these captured in the bylaw as it is written today? Or they would have to be added to it?
But this is the first read.
Right.
Sorry, Patrick. There'll be some minor changes between then and now, but if council's okay with that, which I think we're hearing here, we'll include a section on typical use or whatever the phrasing is going to be, just to make that very clear to address those things that are just the normal day-to-day business of any of the properties facing Water Street.
Just to follow up on Councillor Neal's comment, since the next motion, not to get ahead of myself, is in regards to a hearing of objections, would we not be better off postponing the hearing of objections until after second reading, when what we're going to present to the public is exactly what we're going to present to the public?
Sure. Yeah, it probably wouldn't hurt. It's not going to hurt anything. I don't think this is one that's going to be strongly debated by the public. I could be wrong, but it would probably be a good idea that give us a chance. The next committee level will have, at that date, the 27th, we'll have the updated bylaw with that additional wording. Then council can review it if you're okay with it. We can go to second reading, even the next week, maybe. We could do the do a 6:30 reading at the October committee meeting, or sorry, the October regular meeting before the regular meeting to see if there's any changes before going to third.
That's, and again, not to get to the next motion or enter debate, but if you did hold it off to the next, to the October meeting, a lot of businesses at the end of October are closed. So it actually gives an opportunity for a lot of business owners to be engaged if they do have some concerns versus September 27th. So at this time, is there any other questions regarding motion 1 before we move to motion 2? Thank you. All right, so I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. And that is everybody. So that motion has been passed. At this point, I will go to first reading. I will have to read it in entirety at one point, but since we are going to make some changes to this, we're anticipating some minor changes. I will read it tonight just by title. This is bylaw number 21-04, a bylaw respecting encroachment upon public streets in the town of St. Andrews, and being enacted by the council of the town of St. Andrews as follows. So this is the following by title. There'd be 2 would be definitions, 3 would be permission required, 4 would be approval required, 5 would be licenses, 6 would be exemptions to this bylaw, 7 would be appeals, 8 would be penalties, 9 is encroachment agreements, 10 is general provisions. And this has been read the first time on the 8th day of September of 2021. Time's flying by, Deputy Mayor. So at this point, we'll move on to the second motion, which we did have a little bit of discussion on, but I'll be looking for Councillor Heenan to also read this one.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The second motion, that Council sets the date of Monday, September the 27th, 2021 at 6:45 p.m. at the courthouse at 123 Frederick Street for a public hearing of objections to Bylaw 21-04, a bylaw respecting encroachment upon the public streets in the town of St. Andrews, and I so move this, Your Worship.
Could we have a seconder to open that one up for conversation? I see Councillor Hurdle. Okay, this is when we talked about potentially tabling if that was council's desire. Over to you, council, what you'd like to do with this one. Councillor Neal.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Is it, I guess I'm just asking about the process here then. Is it worth tabling this, or should we just defeat this and like reintroduce it with a new date?
If you defeat it, I believe it'd be done for 6 months. So I think you would need to table it and we would just amend it at the next committee meeting.
Unless if you're just looking for those minor adjustments, we could set the date as October the 4th, which is your regular meeting. And just then you'll have a chance to review it at committee yourselves. We could release it that week, you know, to the public, and they'd still have a week to review it.
Over to council. I don't know if you're comfortable releasing a document for a week before a public hearing of objections. It's pretty tight timing for businesses when they're open. But again, over to you. I don't see the urgency if it was delayed later in the month.
Your Worship, just
Yep.
one thing, once you've moved this bylaw to first reading, a copy of the draft goes onto the website for review. And if you wish to modify it with the additions, that would also be included with that. So it'll already be out earlier than the week before.
Okay. So we'd have the second version out, I guess, the week before then. Over to you, council.
It'll go on.
On the flip side, Your Worship, since the tourist season's almost over, you know, when most businesses are going to be operating, there's really no hurry. So if you want to just table this and once you're comfortable with the bylaw, deal with it before Christmas, that's plenty of time, I'm sure.
I feel like that's cleaner, but over to you, council. So I'll be looking for either, we can go to vote, or is there any other debate or motions to table? I see Deputy Mayor Akaji.
So, CAO Spear, you are saying that if we table this till Christmas, bring it back then?
I'm just saying that there's no real hurry, that we could table it now and then make a decision at the October meeting when you want to have a public hearing objections. Let's say it's November, we give everyone a month to review it before third reading, and then that'll give lots of debate for the public to have a review of it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Aaron.
essentially, in our October regular meeting, we would go to second reading, but also set the hearing of objections on a date in the future on that particular day would be the process. Deputy Mayor?
So we need to table it, correct? All right, then I move that we table it to the October meeting, I think. Thank you.
Could I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hurdle, and we'll open up the tabling for any discussion. Seeing none, so we'll call the question. All in favor of tabling, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? And Councillor Gumashal, you're in favor, not opposing, correct?
Sorry, I had my hand up in favor, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. That was everybody. That has been tabled. Sorry, this is a long one. All right, we'll go to the next one, which again is Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. This is reference number PED 210806, appointment of the Planning and Advisory Committee. Council approved bylaw 21-02, being a bylaw to establish a planning advisory committee for the town of St. Andrews on May the 3rd, 2021, with an enactment date of September 1, 2021. To proceed with the PAC, Council has to appoint members before the enactment period. Provided to Council are applications submitted for the opportunity to serve on PAC. It is recommended that Council select 6 public representatives and appoint 1 councillor to the committee, following the same number structure as Town Council to be an of Town Council. To be eligible citizen, bylaw 21-02, section 2C. To be a member of the Planning Advisory Committee, a person shall be 1, an eligible voter residing in the town of St. Andrews, or 2, a member of council, agent, or employee of the municipality, but 3, the majority of the advisory committee shall be other than such members, agents, or employees as identified in subsection 2. The motion is as reads, that Council appoints the following citizens and councillor to the Planning Advisory Committee for the town of St. Andrews. 1, Councillor Lee Heenan. 2, Chris Fleming. 3, Dwight Ingalls. 4, Jeff Cross. 5, Jill Stewart. 6, Kevin Simons. 7, Jenny Cook. I so move, Your Worship.
Could I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Neal. Okay, we'll open it up for any debate discussion on this particular motion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you to all that put their names forward for this committee. Unfortunately, we could only choose 6, so but thank you all for who volunteered for this committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else?
Yeah, Your Worship, Councillor Gumashal here. I'd like to echo those sentiments of the Deputy Mayor. There was a number of very strong candidates, and it was very difficult to choose. And thanks to everyone who put their name forward. Please don't take it the wrong way and offer for other committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gumashal. Anyone else on council? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion for the PAC, please signify by saying aye. Any contrary minded? Seeing none, that motion has been carried. I just wanted to echo both Councillor Gumashal and Deputy Mayor's comments on, first of all, the individuals that will be serving as the PAC. It is a little bit of a commitment, not that huge of one for time, but yet it is still a commitment. So thank you to everybody for raising their hand to offer for that. I think it's a wonderful win for the community to bring our Planning Advisory Committee back to being people in St. Andrews making decisions specifically for St. Andrews. But I say that because I also want to recognize PRAC. PRAC has done it for a number of years, and they've done a wonderful job. It is not to slight anything against what they have accomplished. It's simply for the fact that we're just strong believers, and a lot of people in the community have come forward and said that when it comes to kind of what's a variance and what's the look and feel of St. Andrews, they feel more comfortable if it's people that actually live in the community. So again, it's nothing disrespectful to the decisions that they made. And of course, we know that Jill Stewart is offering. She's going to bring that continuation from PRAC to PAC. And we have a number of members on this PAC that have served in the past. So we're very blessed to have this particular organization. And again, like the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Grumichel said, for the individuals that were not selected, we will have a number of different committees that we are organizing over the next few months. Please raise your hand. I can tell you that the process was very close. There was a lot of great candidates, and if you weren't on this committee as one of the actual assigned members, it's not a slight at all. So many strong resumes and so many contributions that we hope they find a way to contribute to this community in another way. So thank you very much for that. At this time, we're going to move to the next motion, Councillor Heenan. And Councillor Hurdle is just going to recuse himself. So we'll begin in about 10 seconds, maybe 8. Who knows? We'll see how quick he is.
7, 6, 5, 4.
Got a little hop to a step right now. All right.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship and Council. This is PED 210808, third and final reading of Bylaw 21-01, respecting short-term rentals. As per the discussion of the Committee of Council meeting on August 30th, 2021, Council directed staff to bring forward the third and final reading of Bylaw 21-01. A bylaw respecting short-term rental properties in the town of St. Andrews for debate and next step. This is the first opportunity for council to review 21-01. Please refer to the background information provided to bring council up to speed on the process. Currently, Bylaw 21-01 is sitting at second reading. Council has the following options. 1, pass Bylaw 2101 for third reading. 2, table Bylaw 2101 for additional review and consultation. 3, defeat Bylaw 21-01. Note that if council defeats Bylaw 2101 and wishes to restart the process, it will be a minimum of 6 months before a new version of bylaw can be brought before council. If council wishes to restart the process, they will have to direct staff to start the process again at a date to be determined after 6 months. The motion is that council grants leave for the third and final reading of Bylaw 2101, a bylaw respecting short-term rental properties in the town of St. Andrews.
Thank you very much. I'm looking for a seconder for that motion. Oh, seconder for that motion. Someone shut my mic off. Thank you. Any seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Blanchard, sorry. Okay, so we now have a first and a seconder. At this particular time, just to review, council has 3 options. It would be to pass this, to table it for further consultation, or defeat it, which would start the consultation process over should we want to implement this bylaw. So I think those are the 3 options before us. So I'll open it up at this particular time for some debate. Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship. I would like to put the motion forward to defeat this bylaw.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heenan. So all you'd have to do is just vote against it. So we don't need to amend it. You would just vote a nay vote if you want to defeat it. And again, in 6 months' time, if this is something that we would like to revisit, restart consultation, or revise and go back to first reading with a different looking bylaw, that would give us the authority to do so. But thank you very much for expressing your thoughts on it. Any other council member? Councillor Blanchard.
Yeah, just quickly, I guess, like I said, I think there is some merit to the discussion and to having a bylaw in regards to short-term rentals. Just to provide, I think in some of the comments that I've seen, some protection to neighbors more than anything. I think there are some parameters I think maybe we could put around short-term rentals, but in its current form, I do not support this. There are too many parameters that I feel anyway, and the comments that I've heard from the community, there are too many, there's too much going on in this particular bylaw to be able to support it. And I don't think it properly addresses some of the concerns around short-term rentals. I shouldn't say that. It does address some of those concerns, but I think it goes above and beyond. And I don't think we need that at this time. I think some additional consultation in the future with a better sense of the direction, with more direction from council in terms of where we think we would like to see it go. But in its current form, I won't be supporting this in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. Any other member of council?
Your worship, Councillor
Councillor
Gumashall here. It's late, so I'll try not to ramble on too much. If this bylaw is defeated, certainly it's not going to go away. Short-term rentals, that's probably a good thing because lots of people want to come and stay. We had some fairly well-written letters from neighbors who had concerns about short-term rentals next door in recent months. And I think that just because, or if this bylaw is defeated, we need to continue to hear from neighbors who are having problems. But not only that, we need to hear from neighbors who aren't having problems, because I think the original intent of this bylaw was that people wanted to preserve their right to the enjoyment of their own property, but also people who want to maybe generate extra funds or want to go away and rent their own house. They also have a right. So everybody has rights, the people who are renting and also the people next door. So I think we need to hear not just bad things from people who are having problems, but also from people who aren't having problems. So right from the get-go, I opposed having a lengthy short-term bylaw. I thought we should have a one-pager. I thought we could control it with just having fees. But in hindsight, I think we do need to have some sort of mechanism so that irresponsible Airbnb renters, people who are in the rental business and aren't doing their utmost to protect their neighbors in a reasonable fashion, highlighting that word reasonable. We need to have some mechanism there for, 1, 2, 3 strikes you're out, so to speak. So I do think we need to shorten it and have a way to get the people who aren't being responsible out of the game. So I didn't mean to ramble on so much. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Gumashall. Any other member of council? Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I would tend to agree with the comments made by the past councillors there. And in respect to what Councillor Gumashall was just talking about, and this would be for staff, I guess, but correct me if I'm wrong, there would be other avenues to deal with some of these issues where, say somebody rents a property and it's, I don't know, whether it's the noise bylaw or something, but there's probably other avenues that we can sort of enforce things on a short-term basis. Would that be correct?
To a certain extent, Councillor, it just depends. There's some nuisance things like parking and stuff. It's a little harder to control, which, will have to be reviewed in combination of our other bylaws just to see what people's concerns are for a couple of 3 of the letters we got to make sure it is covered under other avenues.
Correct. Any other question for you, Councillor Neal? You're good.
No, I'm good with that. Again, I would be in favor, I think, of probably defeating this motion as well and beginning the process again. Not that I want to make work for everybody, but I think it would be important to hear both sides of this and try and drill it down a little bit. That's a little more specific in what it is we're actually trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Deputy Mayor.
Gotta find my button. Thank you, Your Worship. It was a long deliberation that we went through. I'd like to thank staff for putting up with us the last council. And I realize that there is a lot of things that are not quite right with it, and we do need to revisit it again. I just hope that we don't have to start from scratch. I mean, we have some good things that were brought forward, and we need to embellish on them. So my vote will be to defeat it until we have the new counselors up to par with it, and sorry staff to put you through it again, but I think this is a touchy subject and we need to be very careful about what we're going to do with short-term rentals in the future. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So everyone's had an opportunity to weigh in. So at this point, I will call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. All those contrary minded, please raise your hand.
Nay.
That is everybody with a nay vote. So that motion has been defeated. Since we're done debate, I will say that I completely respect council's decision. If you talk to a lot of short-term rental owners, a lot of them will say that they do need a short-term rental bylaw, but it was just that this particular bylaw wasn't the one that they felt was best for the community. I will also say that when we went to first reading on this bylaw, it did change 2 times afterwards, and it changed significantly. So the fact that you defeated this bylaw, and if council decides to bring something back in the near future, it will restart the process. And I think that that process is critical in order to be transparent. So I think 100% I'll back this council any day, but I do think that you made the right decision on this one. The other thing just to note before I move on is that through the tourism accommodation levy, we will have at that point another year of data to be able to see, did short-term rentals in fact grow in our community? Did they decline or did they stay steady? And that data set is very important when you're looking at how you move forward. The more years of data you have, the more that this council can make a better decision with staff support. And to echo Deputy Mayor's comment, I know how much all members of staff have put into this particular bylaw, and the number of emails and letters. And I just wanted to say that this particular motion, like any, we appreciate all you do. A lot of them pass, some of them don't, but it doesn't take away the fact that I think there was a lot of key learning in this for this council to look at how they pick this up or don't pick this up and move forward. So thank you for all that you do on this, and of course, every day. So we'll jump back to the agenda at that one. We'll call Councillor Hurdle back in the meantime. Yes, he was only, yeah. Give him the 8 seconds. All right, so we're all back. So at this particular time, that did wrap up all of the motions. There's no new business, so we will open it up to question period. I note that there is still one member left here. Casey left, so we have one left. Is there any questions that anyone from the audience has today? Okay, and Mr. Knopper, is there anything online that was submitted through email to the town?
Thank you, Worship. No, there were no questions that were submitted to the town.
Thank you very much. So at this point, I'll look to all of our councillors. We have 7 minutes left to get this under 2 hours. So any member of council at this point have any comments that they would like to bring forward? Councillor Heenan.
Thank you. I find the reports from the staff absolutely detailed, and I have to say that they're a pleasure really to read. And I want to put this out there that I say a big thank you, because it's like they talk about the picnic tables. I mean, it's really great, like the good relationship with Cook Agriculture on borrowing spare mooring equipment, etc. I mean, it's really great, and I'm very proud of the staff for what they do. And I want to say a thank you publicly. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Any other member of council? Okay, that looks like.
Your Worship, I'd echo those comments from Councillor Heenan. Those reports, I believe, are all available online. But I'd also remind him that in the not so distant past, we used to read through all those reports during council meetings. So those days are behind us, but all those reports are available online for the public to read. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gumashell. Just doing one last check, Deputy Mayor Akagi.
I want to thank CHCO TV for being with us this night. Thank you for again joining us back after our COVID absence. You guys are really noticeable and are great for our presence in the public. So thank you very much.
And at that point, I actually had a comment that it was directed towards CHCO for being here for production, but the deputy mayor is looking over my shoulder, stealing my notes. So, but all seriousness, thank you very much. This level of production, most small communities anywhere don't have. So we certainly appreciate your presence. Thank you for being here. And echo the comments just on staff reports. I can't go on enough. I'm not going to say what community I was in recently, but I just looked at the way that our public works takes care of our community, and it's not to slight the other community, but we are truly blessed to live where we live. And thank you to all staff does day in and day out. All right. So at this point, I'll just confirm there's no need to go to closed session. So I will be looking for the motion to adjourn, Deputy Mayor, and I don't have to look even both ways. Councillor Heenan, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That's everybody. We're adjourned.
I think you should hold up your huge gavel.